Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Coronacast number 8. Davis Mattek is on the line for our weekly chat. We even took some of your questions this time around. Remember, please share the show around on social media. It really does help out. And leave a review of the podcast for me or the Takecast on Davis or both. 5-star reviews, something nice there. But just spread the word around. Smash the like button for the video. That always goes a long way in helping. Just want to let you know that this could be the last Corona cast that we do for some time because I might be off soon. But in the meantime, we're going to have a ton of MMA coverage coming out. UFC specifically. Paul and Cody have it on lockdown. When the Wednesday card, next Saturday card, any card that comes out for UFC, we're going to have that. Me, Jeff, and Tim broke down the NFL schedule. We have Outlaw Tour Golf. We're going to have more fantasy football. My movie bracket is going to come out sometime in the next few weeks. The shows are done. We're just waiting to release them. So we got a lot going on in the Pat Mayo Experience. So go tell a friend, enjoy the episode, and hope everyone's doing safe, all right? Let's go.
Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Here, I can actually just go look in my history real quick. The $10 contest was $20K prize pool, $5K to first. There ended up being 1,500 entries out of 2,400 spots.
It's not bad.
No, and and I mean they're running it back tonight too. They have both showdown and regular, which is wild.
And this is for Korean soccer?
Korean professional soccer, yeah.
Do you know any of these guys?
I would say I probably know 30 players in this league overall. Compare, and I think there are 10 teams of 25 players each. So roughly 5% of the pool I'm familiar with.
That's actually not bad. That's far more than I know about the Outlaw Tour.
Yeah, I mean I knew one player on the Outlaw Tour.
Not this week. Not this week. There's a ton of guys this week.
Really?
Yeah, Damon is the favorite. Streelman is second. Spawn, Lashley, Brandon Harkins.
Wow. Damn, so they just had what? They just had guys come out to Arizona to play?
I think these are all Scottsdale guys. So check.
Oh yeah, they're there anyway.
Woo. No, there's guys playing.
And they're just out here grinding a buck. You love to see it.
It is, but I don't know if there's value or not in fading them. I'm going to be fading them, but Spawn's 40-1 to win.
Yeah, I mean that feels crazy because there are club pros playing in this thing.
Yeah, but I just never know how serious some guys are going to take it. I bet Nate Lashley at 33-1. He's down to 16-1 as I read it right now.
Colt Knost is here.
Yeah, he retired.
Yeah. He just likes to hang out with, he was buddies with Spieth.
Was he? I guess they're Texas guys.
Yeah.
He has a podcast, I think.
Yeah, he just likes to hang out.
So what's new? How are things?
I'm going to go golfing tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Playing by yourself?
I am playing 1 to a cart with my girlfriend's uncle and one of his buddies.
So are you worried that they're not in quarantine?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but I mostly am not worried though. I think it's the median outcome here is that things should be fine. Pay before you get to the course and everything. And it seems like the virus does not transmit near as well outside, basically.
Yeah, but do we know that?
No, it would just be purely anecdotal evidence, basically.
Yeah, I feel like that's everything right now. I threw it out on Twitter. I'm sure you saw it because I tagged you in it, but questions about it. And all the different stuff, where do you think that the virus emanated from? What do you think about this? I legit have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea where the coronavirus came from, right? That's not something I have any expertise on.
I think what people want to hear, at least this person wants to hear, is that we think it was constructed in a lab and injected into the population to do this. Like, I don't think that was the case.
No, I mean, it could be from a lab, or it could just be some mutated virus from something that like already exists, right? Like it's just yeah. I mean, and I don't even think the origin point seems all that important, really, to me.
It doesn't really seem important in the day-to-day run of like what we're going through. I guess trying to figure out where it came from, why it happened, see if we can isolate that so things like this don't ever happen again. I could see the value in that, but as we try to like live through it, I guess it's relatively irrelevant at this point.
Well, and I mean, I guess I'm assuming that if this was created in a lab somewhere, the people that created it or the governments that created it would be looking at everything, and they would either be saying, okay, this is going exactly how we wanted it to, we wanted it to decimate everything and we'll never know anyway, or it would be the converse where they were like, oh, this is terrible, this is just the long-term ramifications of this from the world economy are horrible, this was a terrible idea, like let's get a vaccine going, but we wouldn't know either way, right?
No, we're never going to find out unless you watch that like fake documentary that's going down, Plandemic, that keeps getting taken down on YouTube and Facebook.
I just block anyone who tweets the word plandemic.
Yeah, like I read sort of a follow. I didn't watch it, obviously, but I read a follow up on it. Be like, here is case for case, like things they say in it that are just objectively false. Like it seems like they wrote their own narrative. Like, no, these are facts. Don't worry about it and don't look into it. Just believe us.
Yeah, I mean, so like, if you remember, there was a film that was popular, like kind of roughly after 9/11, and it was just called Zeitgeist, the movie.
Was that like was that like Loose Change?
So yeah, in the same variety. It was really popular. This was like a thing that people watched. Like you could even maybe mention this in like polite conversation, and people would know what you were talking about. And I watched it when I was young and impressionable in high school, and I think I probably believed some of the things that were said. And looking back on it now, the premises of this movie are so laughably bad and stupid. And I feel like the people who would watch the Plandemic and think of that are approaching it with the mindset of a like a toddler or like a high schooler. Like they just don't get it.
Yeah, well, you say the Zeitgeist thing would have crossed over into just you could talk about it and people would know what you're talking about, where a lot of the stuff that we see on the internet just isn't the case outside of the people that you know on the internet that are looking at the same stuff
Correct.
as you. But
Yeah.
it does seem like this Plandemic thing, like it had like millions and millions of views. Like I think that's something that people watched, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. I think you're right. I think people probably did watch it.
It's kind of crazy. It reminds me of that, like, remember Coney?
Yes. Yeah.
Apparently, like, that was all just like a sham too. Like it was true. It was true, but it was like wildly infactual and out of date.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I think that, unfortunately, I think most of us just sort of take that. I think most of us just sort of take things on the internet not at face value anymore. I think that we read something and we're like, well, this is most likely not true now.
That's probably the best way to approach it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Like where do you go to read something or to find out information and be like, this is legit, I believe this, and just not really even question it?
The Economist is my favorite news source.
Is that a news source though? Or is it like data and then they kind of tell you what the data means?
No, I mean they report news. They're like basically a weekly newspaper. I mean, the issue, I do not read The Economist as much anymore because The Economist is it's a conservative British newspaper, but I think that the reporting in it is largely the best and aligns with what I think is mostly true as it relates to what's going on in the world.
Yeah, it just seems to me now, like no matter where you look, like there's just so much spin on everything that it's hard to decipher what's true. Not necessarily what's true, because if you see enough places doing it, like if you look at a right-wing place, a left-wing place, you can kind of merge together like, oh, everyone is saying this, unless they're all in the big conspiracy about it. But it's the spin parts that you can kind of take out. That's why I like looking, like you were telling me about those places that have just been releasing the raw numbers for the COVID cases. Now,
Yeah.
I think that the presumed expectation when even looking at those is that like China's lying about their numbers. There's a lot of countries that are lying about their numbers. The US is probably lying about their numbers in some spots, or under testing, or trying to manipulate them to look a certain way. But I would trust the US's numbers more than I would trust China's numbers, although I wouldn't trust the US numbers 100%. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I would, and I don't even know if US, I don't even know if US hospitals would be lying. I just think that some of them, don't have the testing capabilities, right? Like we still are, we're 2 months in, and testing is not widespread in the United States.
No, and maybe that's on purpose. Maybe it's to show that this isn't as out of control as possible. If we don't release the tests, or at least we limit the amount of people that can be tested, then it just seems like fewer people actually have it. And that's a way to really reel it in and make people feel more comfortable. Or, like, there is a direct thing here where this, I don't want to say it's not serious, but it's less serious than maybe the freak out at the very beginning had a lot of people believing. That if they can show that the cases are like kind of peaking here, that 4 timesing that number is only going to make people go hysterical. That keeping the numbers at what they are, big, but not like so outlandishly big that people can't comprehend, is probably good for society and keeping sanity.
I actually would go the other way, because I mean, people are just fed up, right? People are now no longer scared enough of getting this disease, of going to the hospital, of COVID-19, to want to stay at home, to want to flatten the curve, to want to sacrifice X, Y, and Z. And I think that, I mean, if the current numbers in the United States right now, which is 1.3 million total cases, 80,000 deaths, 1,300 deaths today, if these are the accurate numbers, that is more optimistic than the most optimistic prognosis on March 15th, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if this is the case, then yeah, I think it is likely, for economic reasons, a smart idea to start thinking about intelligent ways to reopen parts of the country. The problem that you're having is the American populace doesn't seem that interested in reopening intelligently. They just want to go back to their lives, and that's going to be a nightmare.
Well, it's funny, like within Canada, it's almost like province to province is going to be a lot different, like it would be state to state and how people are approaching it. But I guess Texas and California would almost be outliers like this in the States. Where
they're like their own thing.
Yeah, it's like Quebec in Canada is its own thing. Like it has no real correlation with the rest of the country. Like they have their own laws, they have their own courts, they have special provisions under the government. They speak a different language in that province. That like they're essentially, what it appears to me, at least from what I can tell, are like reopening, like now, and it's where the most cases are in Canada.
And I mean, I think a very important thing is that, I mean, okay, so my patience with like the liberty people in the United States it's to zero, right? Like it's to absolute zero. On the other hand, there are very real costs to keeping people at home. And also, as we've acknowledged a bunch of times on this show, it is an incredibly privileged position to be able to take, to say, I have enough money, I have enough security, I don't need to go outside my home to work. I can either, get by on what I have saved, I can work from home. But, there are many, many people in the United States, and I assume in Canada as well, though I can't speak to it directly, who literally this has been a complete disruption in their life, both financially and, just like, who wants to live in a country where for years you don't really get to live your life? Like, that's horrible. And I acknowledge that these things are true, while still saying reopening just at the drop of a hat is a bad idea.
So I believe what we're doing in Toronto, I don't know if it's going to be the case for all of Ontario, because not surprisingly, most of the cases in this province are in Ottawa and Toronto, the two major metropolitan areas. That makes the most sense. It has the most population density. That's where international travelers came to and from. That's why it's here. Like, I saw a lot of airport taxi drivers and limo drivers. Like, there's an abnormal both case rate and death rate amongst those people, which really sucks. Yeah, it just didn't even occur to me. Like, of course, that would be like Uber drivers, Lyft drivers. I guess it'd be one thing. You could avoid the airport if you wanted, but if your job was to, for 3 weeks before you even knew this was a thing, or even when it was a thing and the planes were still open and international travel was still happening, that you were picking these people up. And I guarantee you, especially people coming from like China, they weren't getting on the transit from the airport to downtown. They were probably taking a limo. So that really sucks. But I believe what the strategy is going to be here is that like malls aren't going to open, but any business that does any sort of retail, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a makeup store, regardless, if you have street front property that you can start doing pickup at the door. You can't have people in the shops yet, but people can like order via phone and schedule a time for a pickup. And then you can go get your stuff. So the businesses can reopen that way. You don't need to have the giant overhead cost of filling out like all of your staff right away. That doesn't solve that problem, but it does get people back to work. It does open up business, and you try to do it in as safe of a way as possible, because we saw a spike in the city on Thursday. I think they said they wanted, before like we even consider reopening, they want to have essentially, I think it was 12 out of 14 days in drops of positive cases. And I think we've had drops 5 of the last 6 days. We had that one like 2.5% spike, but that could be a lot of things. It could mean that there was under testing on, or results delayed on Tuesday and they showed up on Thursday. Like, that's the tricky part with all of this. Like, I think you want to see everything on the down curve, but you don't want to reopen, like you were saying, completely right away. I think we talked last week about like my friend, he has a restaurant, and what they're going to have to do is essentially take out 2/3 of their tables if they want to reopen. Like, that's step one to reopening. Like, is that what all of the other places are doing? Or is it like, pack them in, as many as we can fit?
Yeah, so that like, pick stuff up, like that gradual reopening, that is like pretty much existed, sort of this whole time in the States, which might be why our case numbers never really got lower like some of the other countries did. Like, we were never in a spot where that was the way things were happening. So, I don't know. I'm starting to feel very pessimistic about any sort of structured reopening, and I'm now just hoping that we basically overestimated how deadly the disease is. That, I think that's got to be the biggest hope that we can have.
Well, do you want sports to come back?
Of course I do.
Because I was trying to think, because one of the questions that someone asked us is, who do you think that coronavirus politically is going to end up being not necessarily good for, but the worst for? Like, is it the worst for Trump? Because it does seem that way. Because I think I read like the latest poll, and I don't know who they're polling on this, but like 71% of people think that like we're opening too early. Like America is opening too early. Well,
if we do not have NFL games, Trump is in a lot of trouble.
Well, that's the thing. I think that if you want sports, vote Republican. That seems to be like the path to least resistance here.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, is like, lib or not, these athletes and these leagues, they know they are just giving up crazy money, right? Like, they are giving up wild amounts of money if they don't, like, if baseball just doesn't play a season, if the NBA is not able to get their playoff revenue, like, I mean, we're talking billions of revenue dollars lost, and it is in pretty much everyone in the league's best interest to find a way to play these games.
Yes, but it feels like if you were to kind of put all of the leagues on a political spectrum, it does feel like the NBA leans the farthest left, where
For
things
sure.
for things like golf and UFC and NASCAR would lean the farthest right. And they're also individual. That's one of the cases behind it, but they're the first ones coming back. I think it's highly encouraging for all of the other sports, as safe or not safe as it is, that someone tested positive on the UFC card. They were like, well, you're off the card. We're still running the card anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, time will tell the consequences of that. Like, are we gonna get a bunch of cases? Like, is that gonna? And I think probably no, or I'm hoping no. But if that ends up not being a big deal, then maybe the path to opening sports back is not as difficult as we thought.
Maybe, but again, you're doing this without fans. This is an individual sport. And, like, honestly, what's worse for the guy who tested positive for COVID? Because obviously he's a UFC fighter. You would presume he's in very good shape. He's probably in the lowest percentile possible of people this would truly, like, if you look at, like, people over 80 are the worst affected. I would think that a UFC fighter who's 27 in his prime is probably one of presumably the least affected people by this. Like, he gets sick, maybe he ends up becoming asymptomatic. It could be really bad, but that would be a very low probability outcome for that particular person. Like, what's worse for him, honestly? Getting COVID or going into a UFC fight and getting knees to the face for fucking 15 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, probably knees to the face, right? You have to think that is likely to be true. So there are other leagues that are opening up in the world, baseball, soccer, and stuff like that. And one of the leagues that is opening back up is the German league, which is, one of the countries that we've talked about that, has done a better job with testing and everything. And in their second division, like half of the team after coming back and after training, like half the team tested positive for COVID. And as of right now, when we are recording this, the way they're ruling it is just saying you all have to go into quarantine. You're forfeiting your games until you're back. So I think that is an interesting way that they're handling it, basically, of just being like, we gotta get these games played.
Is it because I don't know how, like, this is the Bundesliga you're talking about, right?
So this team that I'm talking about right now is in the second division. So they had enough players put in quarantine that they are not allowed to train or participate in games for the next 2 weeks.
Oh, did I tell you about my UFC conspiracy theory like 3 weeks ago of what they were going to do? And it's happened, but I mean, I have no idea if it's true or not.
Let's hear it.
That I thought that the best way that they could approach this in terms of like public reaction and just to show that they're being safe about it was book a fight on the card and just pay the two people off to say, you guys are never actually going to fight, but one of you is going to test positive for coronavirus. So we can show that, hey, we're actually testing when they're not actually testing.
Well, that would, I like that idea a lot in terms of like what I would expect out of the UFC, right? Because that's a league that's about getting their money and has a little bit, they have a little bit less of a bleeding heart audience, So when the news came out, were you thinking, oh, well, this is just going to get canceled? Was that your first thought?
No, it wasn't actually. I was curious to see if it would get canceled or not. And as we're recording this, I believe it's starting right now, so it's happening.
I think it locks in 10 minutes.
All right, so there we go. Hopefully by the time this is released, I'm like 100K richer. That would be nice. Or at least when I played, I was just so gung-ho to play this. I wagered far more than I should have on this event. Just in general,
yeah.
And like
that was me with Korean soccer last night.
And even Cody told me, like Cody's the best source of this, and Paul told me too. It's like the Wednesday card that they're running is probably the card that you want to bet on or play DraftKings on.
Oh, they're doing more.
Oh yeah, so there's one as we speak right now. There's one on Wednesday and there's one next Saturday.
Wow.
They're taking.
Okay, so if we have one guy tested positive so far, they don't cancel. What are we handicapping the odds that they are able to get all three of these slates off without canceling the event?
I'd set it because they want to do it, and I think they're all. I don't know if
for sure.
I don't know if it's going to be at that like Fight Island. I don't know where the other two are. I think they're all just going to be in Florida. And if they're in Florida, it just seems like Florida's like, yeah, whatever, fuck it, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen throughout all of this that many of the memes we feel about Florida are there. That's real life, right?
But what?
Florida
But
is
what is
a DGAF state.
Yeah, but like. What's the death rate in Florida? Like, I don't hear, it's not like, well, the rest of the country is this, but Florida's death rate is 80 times higher. It doesn't seem to be the case. Like, it seems like they're doing okay, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think that you make an interesting point, and I think that the death rate for all of this stuff is actually just going to stay pretty stable from area to area. I think what we might start hearing is overall caseloads in Florida might be really large, right? The death rate will be fine, but we might start seeing, hospitals, filling up and stuff in Florida. But I don't actually know where to get that information. That is not on the website that I use, the worldmeters.info. I imagine someone listening to this probably has access or knows some of those Florida numbers. So, if you're out there and I would be curious.
So, because it's not only that people seem to be disregarding or just living life as normal in Florida, and nothing has stood out to me, at least that I've heard of. Again, I could be completely off on that about the numbers inside Florida, but you got to think like, no one is, people have quote unquote quarantined for a bit. It seems like everyone's just kind of back to business right now. But it's also like the oldest population too. Like Maine has the oldest population in the States. I think it's like 20% are above 65 years in age. Florida's second. They're also above 20% in residents above 65. And that's not even full-time residents. Think about how many people from like New York are down there right now, or the rest of the country from the north that's currently in Florida that's just old. And we haven't seen it yet pop up. Like where I'm from has in Nova Scotia has an inordinate amount of cases for the population. You're like, what the hell is going on here? But apparently it's all located in the big low income old folks home in the city. Like that's where all the cases and deaths have come from. It's nowhere else, it seems.
Yeah, that is by and large what we're hearing from the reporting is that old folks homes are like extreme ground zero for this. Like everyone there is at risk of dying from it. It's a huge transmission area. My thought would maybe be that in Florida, maybe there's got to be, I would think, a low amount of overlap between the snowbirds from New York, the retirement communities and stuff, and like the beachgoers, right? Like I would think that those are relatively segregated communities, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just making that up.
I really don't know. I would think so. Like most of those like old, because old folks in Florida, not to say that this is everybody, but as opposed to old folks' homes in different places, like you're looking at a richer old folk in Florida, I would think, because they're just rich people who come from around the country. Those people are probably in gated communities, that kind of thing, where you're probably right that there's less intermingling with the rest of society. Yeah,
like that's these guys, they're going out to go golfing. They're probably having dinner at their places. They're not they are not going to the beach. They're not doing young people stuff.
Yeah, I would think so.
And young people are not coming to come hang out at the old folks home because it's not like they're grandkids, because a lot of people who retire in Florida move from other places. I'm sure that's not unilaterally true.
No, but if we're just going to talk in generalizations, which we do on this show, that would make the most sense to me. So I think Florida is just a really curious test case for all of this, that if things go okay in Florida, I don't see why they wouldn't start going well everywhere else.
Well, and it's hard to know exactly what the reporting is like, but, we have heard it reported that things are fine in Belarus, where they're basically just acting like the coronavirus doesn't exist. I saw, and again, this could just be a lie, the same way we don't really believe, the China numbers, but I saw a report of like 150 approximate COVID deaths in Belarus, where they have just been carrying on life as completely normal, going to the store, going to work, sports, concerts. So they had like a national pride like parade, like a military parade, and stuff like that. So, I don't know. It is certainly a possibility that COVID is not as deadly to, the average healthy person as we thought. It is in the realm of possibility.
Wouldn't that be fucked? I hope that's the case, but like after everyone, and maybe it's because the one thing I know this has been brought up a lot, but the fact that people did quarantine, people did take social distancing measures, that kind of thing seriously for even a month, you have to think curbed it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any way you could look at the situation and think anything different, right? To think anything other than that, um, you know, the curve was somewhat flattened. I don't know if it would be, the worst thing on earth if we, because at the very least, even if it was not, not as horrible and terrible as we all thought, um lives were certainly saved. People have died of the coronavirus, right?
Oh,
So it,
yeah.
it would not be like the worst injustice in human history.
No, but I guess the thing that I've been seeing more and more recently, it does seem like some people want there to be more problems. So the last 2 months like weren't a waste that we did this, and they
Right.
don't want to open up the possibility that the people that didn't take it seriously were more
right.
right than wrong. No, because no one was right either way on this. There was people who said this isn't a real thing; it's the flu. Obviously, that wasn't true. But then you had the people being like, "Well, everyone's going to die," and then obviously they weren't right either. But it seems like the people who did not wanted worst case scenario, but predicted worst case scenario, are more up in arms about all of this because they were from the outset. They don't want to look like reactionary, panicky people.
What's crazy is I actually think we might be in the worst case scenario, and I will explain why that is. So obviously true worst case scenario is that this is a contagion level, just nothing we can do. It wipes out, half the world population, right? That's terrible. But where we are right now in, these large industrial countries that have, loads of white collar workers and stuff, is we don't have enough evidence to say like it's fine to go back to work, it's fine to go about daily life. A lot of people are still dying, a lot of people are still sick, the case rates are increasing every day. But it's also not so deadly that a lot of people are no longer afraid. A lot of people are pissed off. So we are just in this, it seems as if we are just in this terrible middle ground where nothing is going to be accomplished. We're going to have people getting sick because they won't stay inside, but we're not going to get any of the economic benefits because some people will still be inside. We're just going to have like 2,000 deaths a day and nothing happening for the next 6 months.
I saw this thing last night. I think it's called Proguardium. I tried to Google it. I couldn't find it. My friend showed it to me. He is actually a COVID profiteer. He works in engineering, and
Love it.
His company has pivoted over, like, at the request of the government to start building tests and kits and things like that. And he showed me this one thing that I think they're going to try in Las Vegas that they might test out over in Korea or potentially China right now, that it's like a mist with some sort of like acid that can kill coronavirus. But doesn't actually harm people or harm like your clothes or anything like that, that you would have to walk through that to get in anywhere and get sprayed.
I kind of love it. That sounds good to me.
I think the casinos are the ones throwing all the money behind this.
Yeah, have you seen some of these like mock-ups of what casinos look like now with like the separators and everything in them?
No.
Oh, it's terrible, right? It looks like what a casino would look like inside of a prison. It's horrible.
Is it like at a poker table? There's like partitions between everyone?
Yeah, like 10-foot tall partitions. You put your cards and everything in underneath. Like you should go find a photo. Like they look ridiculous.
The one thing I love to gamble. And
Same.
I love to play table games. I love to go play craps. I love playing blackjack. I like as we discussed last week, I prefer live poker over online poker. But like if you're jonesing to play some slots or something like that, like can't you just go on an app and do it? Isn't that a thing you can do in America?
Yeah. In some states you can do it legally for money. In other states you either, would have to play a free game or would have to do it illegally. And I'm sure actually, an issue that would happen because I think in like Vegas you can't play those games online. I think that the casinos have done a good enough job of lobbying that you still have to go play brick and mortar, but like in Jersey you can play slots online.
I saw that they were holding. Yeah, there's something to do with Las Vegas law where you have to like sign up through the casino in order to play online. That they were holding signups in casino parking lots where you would have to go sign up and then you could play online.
Yeah, it seems terrible, right? Seems like that's gonna lead to 10 unnecessary cases of COVID or whatever.
Yeah, unless they have that spray machine.
I mean, sign me up for the spray machine. I'm in. I'm on board on the spray machine.
It'd be good for airports.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I don't think I'll feel comfortable flying for a long time because even at the best of times, airports and airplanes are just absolute breeding grounds for sickness and disease. Like I feel like you're like 50-50 of just like getting a cold just getting on an airplane in general.
It seems like I don't know how it is in America right now in terms of airline travel, but I know in Canada like there aren't full flights. There's barely like 20% full flights kind of going every day. That it does seem like now that they're disinfecting and the people that are traveling are, everyone has to wear a mask on a plane, I believe, on certain airlines. Like, that's just a rule. Like, you can't fly if you don't do that. And I always find it really funny that, like, people get really triggered about, well, you can't tell me to wear a mask. It's like a store can tell you anything they want. Like, no one is infringing on your freedoms if they're a corporation. Like, Costco can tell you whatever the fuck they want. You don't need to shop there. It's not, I don't understand that part of it.
Don't tread on me.
But no one's treading like that's not a public freedom. That's a corporation, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. That's their freedom to be able to tell you, the consumer, what the fuck to do.
These are the people we're dealing with, right? These are the stone cold morons who don't understand that a business telling them to wear a mask is not oppression, right? Like it's so hard to have reasonable discourse on reopening when these are the sorts of people that want the reopening, It would be one thing if the government told you you had to wear a mask 24/7 at your home, on your own personal property, that kind of thing. That would be oppression. Correct.
And that would be a legitimate gripe. But saying, I'm going to Costco, I'm not wearing a mask, this is an outrage. Like, fuck off. Don't go.
Yeah, it's yeah, and it's like, like we now have the conservative position of people are like tweeting like, oh, I'm don't call me a grandma killer if you want, but I want to go to the zoo and museums. And it's just like, how is this a position that people are taking? It feels crazy.
I mean, if you go to the zoo, take precautions. Like it does seem like if people were willing to actually
take precautions,
to actually follow like legitimate social distancing rules, society could reopen tomorrow. But we know, and everyone knows, that people aren't going to do that, and they don't want to risk it. Like, restaurants could open if people sat, like, each individual table was, like, 6 feet away from each other. That could work. It really could.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways that we could just get it figured out, right? Like, things could just be, we would have functional stuff. I mean, the problem you have with the United States is there's just so many people, right? And there's not really an effective way to police all of those people, and it's certainly too big of a country to operate on like an honor system. You know what I mean? Like that's not a viable way to approach reopening.
Yeah, because the big thing is, I mean, you kind of hit on the key word, like policing it. Like, this shouldn't have to be policed by any sort of actual authority. This should be policed by communities. Like, people should
by like common sense.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there's just too many people in America for that actually to happen. Like, there's almost too many people here for that to happen because there's like goobers all around. Like, I opened up like my Toronto news this morning, and what was the first thing I saw was some drunk driver drove into 2 separate houses last night. Like, there's people like this in society. Like, you're just not going to win. And if someone's going to get drunk, drive around, and crash into 2 houses, what do you think his stance on being responsible out in public is? Like, it's non-existent.
Yeah, that man is he's not going to voluntarily wear a mask. No,
and did we have actual figures on masks yet? Like, I'm fine with wearing a mask. I only ever I've rarely worn a mask, but every time I go grocery shopping, I wear a mask. Like, if I go into a store that has a lot of people in it, I wear a mask. That's it. I've probably worn it 3 times since all of this started. Like, if I'm at home, I don't need to do that. I'm out for a run, I probably don't want to be wearing a mask. Like, not a lot of people are wearing masks around here outside of being in stores.
Yeah, if I understand the mask thing right, I think it's more to, like, so you don't spread it as opposed so you don't get it. Like, it does a better job of keeping the respiratory droplets from going out as opposed to keeping them from going in. That again, that could be wrong. That is just my understanding of the situation.
So that, back to the original point that I wanted to talk about on this show about, like, who do you trust, who do you not trust as it comes to a news source? Like, that has been a real problem in all of this.
Well, so actually, I would say the biggest problem is, even if the sources are trustworthy, things will get reported like there is no evidence that thing X does thing Y, but there also is no evidence that thing Y doesn't do thing X. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so like, there's no evidence that masks keep you from getting the coronavirus. There's also no evidence that they're like, because it's too hard to get these studies done right now. Like, scientists are completely flying by the seat of their pants with this right now, basically.
And which is horrible, horrible news, because as anyone who has any familiarity with science goes, that this stuff can change a lot over time anyway, but just for an actual sample and a real test case, like when they came out and said, like, you know, a vaccine is at least 18 months away, it's because studies need to happen. Testing needs to happen. You don't want to have a false positive. Like, but the pandemic lady who I was reading into, like the main person in it, basically what happened, I think it was like restless leg syndrome or some like weird disease, that she made a false positive on something saying, like, oh, this correlates to this, but it turned out like the sampling was wrong, or the sampling was infected, but she was going out and spewing all this anyway. Like, it just wasn't credible what she was talking about. And they had run other tests after the fact that did not prove what she had said happened. In fact, it was the opposite of what she had said happened. But she ended up doing that. Then she became like an anti-vaxxer. Now she's onto this coronavirus thing. Like, you can make science say whatever you want, but legitimate journals would not publish that. And it just seems like, no matter whether it's right or wrong right now, because the sampling is so small, the testing is so limited, that you're not going to get good science on any of this, whether it be right or wrong.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of hunches. You're going to get a lot of Dr. X found this in his study. I mean, we've already seen it. We saw it with remdesivir, which is an anti-malarial drug that the pharmaceutical company Gilead has been testing, and they had a doctor at the University of Chicago say, you know, I'm getting good results with this with my patients. And then we had the actual Gilead remdesivir people saying, you know, we're not quite sure about this yet. And then, you know, you're also getting we saw it with the hydrochloroquine, where it killed some people because, you know, they were taking the wrong doses of it, and then other doctors have been having really good results with it. Basically, once a week, a different doctor or a different clinic will say that a combination of vitamins has done really effective in treating it. Because, again, from my understanding, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. What actually happens when you get, part of the things that happen when you actually get coronavirus is something called a cytokine storm. And that cytokine storm is really reliant on your immune system not functioning. And apparently these vitamin cocktails have been very successful at fighting the cytokine storm. And so whatever.
But do we know who these experiments are being done on? Like, are they being done on?
Exactly. No, we have no idea.
Like, are they being done on 80-year-olds? Are they being done on 25-year-olds? Are the people white? Are the people black? Are the people Native American? Are they Mexican? Like, those are factors that would have to go into this. Everyone's genealogy is a bit different. That it even depends on the part of the world, too. Like, if something was successful in India for Indians, would that be successful for your average American? I don't know. I would think that it wouldn't be. Like, there would be cultural stuff, environmental stuff, age stuff, race stuff that would just be different for all people.
Yeah, and we're getting none of that information, right? And we won't get a lot of that information for I would assume a minimum of 12 months probably, like we're like it's not enough time for this stuff to get tested in a way that's actually science instead of just like people guessing or reporting on their results in their one hospital or their one lab with their one set of patients.
Because the UFC is going off without a hitch, why were people so... I just saw a lot of boisterous people on Twitter just being like, once the COVID positive came, it's like, well, gotta shut it down. Like, it would be irresponsible to not let it go. Like, it seemed like there was a lot of those people. Like, we don't know. Like, what do you care at this point? It's a very isolated thing. No one is forced to be there. Like, they can be there if they want to be there. If they had so many problems with a fighter testing positive, one of the other fighters on the card could have been like, you know what, I'm not fighting. Like, I think this is unsafe. I'm not doing it. But everyone who's there seems to be okay with it. Why was there such an outrage for it? That's when I got back to, like, the people who predicted this was going to be the worst kind of want it to be the worst, so they weren't
kind of want it to be the worst. Yeah. And I get that. Like, I get that a little bit because, I thought this was going to be terrible. I thought a lot more people were going to die than have died thus far. And I'm sure that I'm certainly at risk of being old takes exposed with things that I said, towards the beginning.
Yeah, but you're friends with that guy now, so he might go easy with you.
Maybe. I don't know if he will. That's interesting. I don't know if in a year from now, if he'll be retweeting people's terrible coronavirus takes. That has potential to be funny.
It does, but that's also like, I guess if it turned out like not necessarily okay, because there is no, even if there are 0 deaths from this point on, it did not turn out okay. It's been really bad.
Correct.
It doesn't seem like it would be distasteful, I think, to do that kind of thing. Like, if it's a bad sports prediction, that's funny. Bad coronavirus takes, either way, not super hilarious.
Correct. Yeah. So this is my take on this, which is, and I feel, because I am certainly more aligned with the bleeding heart liberal folks who, we got to do anything we can to save one life, whatever. My take is that having things to entertain people, having things to distract people, having things to remove people from like a lot of the things that are terrible, right? Thinking about the coronavirus, thinking about how both of the major American political parties are just, stepping on their own dicks day after day, just messing up, making things worse for the common man, and there's a real human cost to asking people to stay inside their houses day after day after day. There's a real human cost to 30% unemployment, and people like to watch sports, right? People like to be distracted by sports. And like you said, this is a group of nothing but consenting adults. Absolutely no one is being asked to stay at this place against their will. And the same would be true if basketball came back. The same would be true when football happens. The same will be true of all these sports.
Okay, I don't necessarily know about that. Yes, you're right about consenting adults doing it. Maybe even on a micro level, in terms of the UFC, maybe people do feel pressure to get back out there as a fighter. But if you're LeBron James and you don't want to do it, but the rest of the Lakers do, then you're in a shitty position where it's not just you anymore.
True.
It's the team. It's everyone else It's an organization.
Actually,
if you're a UFC fighter, it's just you.
So I would actually go the other way if LeBron doesn't want to play, LeBron's going to be fine no matter what. Nothing's happening to LeBron.
Bad example.
If Anthony Tolliver doesn't want to play, he's making the veterans minimum. He needs, and the veterans minimum in the NBA next season. If they don't finish out this year, when the NBA comes back, those contracts are getting cut in half. Those contracts are getting cut by 75% maybe. So there's actually more incentive, more financial pressure, because I'm sure a lot of those guys are living above, like, or very close to the top of their financial means range. I mean, we see this stuff with athletes all the time, where guys who are kind of on the edges live, a really, like a B+ lifestyle. And if that money leaves unexpectedly, they're going to be screwed. So there might be athletes who feel like their back is really against the wall with this stuff.
Yeah, and that would force them back into action. So consenting adults is probably true, but I think that applies more to the individual sports rather than
but there are, you're right. There are still really problematic things, not really semi-problematic things with, I mean, the biggest problematic thing with getting sports back is, we can't figure out testing in the United States. We can't get testing to everyone who needs it. But it seems like when sports are involved, miraculously we get an unlimited number of tests for the people, and that is, if not like actually criminal and costing people lives, it's at least a bad look.
True. I can't wait for sports to come back, but there'd be no fans, and then people complaining that there's no fans. Like, that's the next step of this.
I mean, I can't get myself to care at all.
It doesn't seem like it'll be a thing, but just wait until sports are back. It'll be a month, and then people will be like, how dare they not have fans? This is unwatchable. I hate this.
Are people complaining about like KBO with no fans or anything? I mean, I don't even know.
No one gives a shit about KBO. Are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, people are staying up to watch it. People are playing these games on
sure
on DraftKings.
Yeah, okay. It's like when I talked about how people are interested in the Outlaw Tour. Sure, people are interested, but
they don't have a lifelong attachment to it the way they do to other stuff.
But not even that. It's just like, it's not actually a lot of people watching this stuff or playing this stuff. Like
it's just us degens.
Yeah, most people who bet on the Outlaw Tour or play a DraftKings Outlaw Tour event have yet to see a second of the Outlaw Tour. They don't even know who's who. They're just playing to play. You think the same thing's not true with KBO? You think people are playing lineups for Korean baseball and be like, well, gotta get up at 3 and see how my lineups do? Fuck that. They're not doing that.
I wonder. I actually wonder how many people are watching the games. I would be very curious. The percentage of people who are playing KBO and staying up to watch the games. That seems interesting to me.
I would set the over under at 15.5%, and I would take the under.
I would take the over on 15.5 of people watching any of the game at all.
Well, when does the first one start? What time?
It depends on the day. It's either 2 days a week. It's at midnight my time, so 1:00 your time, and then 4:30 a.m. the other days, 5:30 a.m. your time.
Yeah, maybe they'll watch like a replay of it in the morning, watch some highlights, but kidding me, tuning into this shit? No way.
I watched the first day. That's it.
Yeah, and you're playing every day, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Who has the best projections for it?
No one has good projections for it yet.
So how do you cap it?
Well, I am not I am not trying to play cash games. That would be, I think, a different story. You'd need good projections for that. I am just stacking in tournaments, and my entire thought process is just trying to avoid high-owned players. Because it's a sport where no one knows anything and the information sources are really narrow. Everyone's looking at the same information. The chalk becomes extremely obvious. So I'm just doing my best to have low-owned rosters.
Yeah, that's essentially the same sort of strategy with the Outlaw Tour, is that if anyone's going to be chalk, just don't play them. I followed
like Alex Cheka that very first day, where he was the only name that people knew, like worst play in the history of golf.
So how many people do you think watched the KBO on ESPN the first night, which would tend to be probably the highest rated
The biggest.
Night? Yeah.
I'd guess 800,000 people.
170,000.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, so no one really cares. No one cares about that sport coming back. They only care about the sports they know coming back.
Yeah, like I would guess that like if Bundesliga does go back up, like that might draw a little bit because whether you're an
Well, it's on at a normal time.
well, it's not on like a normal time. It's in Germany. That's what.
Yeah, but it's on a time when Americans are not asleep.
Sure, I mean that's the one thing. Like it is overnight, but like it's KBO baseball. It's Korean baseball. It's if you had to rank the Korean baseball league in the pantheon of world baseball leagues, like MLB number 1, Japanese league is probably number 2. Maybe one of the Caribbean leagues is number 2.
No, KBO is number 2.
Korean baseball is bigger than Japanese baseball?
That's got to be true.
No,
Let me look it up.
That can't be true.
Japanese Pro Baseball League.
Like Mr. Baseball, Tom Selleck played in the Japanese league. He didn't play in the Korean league, Davis.
I mean, I knew like some of the players in the KBO. Let's see, the Japanese Nippon Professional Baseball League.
That's Japan, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
12 teams. Recent history.
Well, I don't know what that's going to tell us.
Yeah, I don't know. If you people listening to this, if you guys know, please let us know. It's possible that I'm just wrong about this.
Anyway, no one cares. And compared to the very top level baseball in the world, it's inferior. At least with the Bundesliga, if you're an EPL fan, a La Liga fan, a Serie A fan, the Bundesliga is one of the best soccer leagues in the world. It's one of the good ones that would have like actual competition. So you could see people watching that. It would be like if the MLS was the only league in the world going right now. Do you think people in Britain would be like, oh, fucking fire up some MLS? No, they'd be like, this is shit. This is shit footy.
Well, and they would be right.
Yeah, but that's like,
but
that's Korean baseball compared to Major League Baseball.
Yes, that is true.
But Bundesliga soccer versus the very top end soccer, like it's one of the top things.
Yeah, it's probably like the third or fourth best in the world.
Yeah, like
and it's enjoyable and it's on at a good time.
But like Belarusian soccer didn't really make an impact on anyone, despite the fact that was going, because that's like the Korean baseball league to soccer.
And you couldn't watch it anywhere. No one got TV rights to it.
Do you think they couldn't get TV rights or didn't get TV rights?
I will say this: I would have watched Belarusian soccer for sure.
Yeah, but apparently you'll watch anything.
Well, I haven't been watching Korean baseball the last couple days.
I don't know if Korean baseball got 170,000 viewers on its peak first night. Can't imagine how few people would have watched Belarusian soccer.
I mean, probably not as many as even the entire country of Belarus.
Let's see. The average, that's the 170,000 was the average telecast over the 3 hours and 26 minutes. That is better than the NBA 2K League game on ESPN Tuesday night, which averaged 40,000 viewers.
Yeah, people really don't like watching video games.
Yeah,
or on TV at least.
How about this? Watching video games sucks. It's horrible.
I like watching League of Legends.
You like watching everything. We've been over this. You'll watch fucking anything.
That is not true. Not anything. But I really like to gamble, and I really like to watch things that I'm gambling on.
I bet on some table tennis last night. That was actually one of the new fun things that we did, because we try to get together once a week on like a Zoom chat or once every 2 weeks. So I got them on my website for betting. And you can, there's a tab that just says like watch live. So you can bet on something, then watch it live. It'll just pop up through the app. So we were on the Zoom call. So we started betting on horse races in California where they had a live stream and losing money. Then we started betting on table tennis. The horse racing was actually fun to watch despite the fact that we were losing. And then we won like 4 consecutive table tennis matches and it was horrible to watch. I would not do that again.
Yeah, table tennis doesn't seem fun. They are bringing back regular tennis. There are now like very small outdoor, like literally like almost like playing in someone's backyard level, but like, like with, top 100 players in the world playing. And I am very eager for the return of tennis.
I mean, I can't watch tennis unless it's like the final of the French Open. I can't envision myself watching not the world's best tennis, A, and B, shit I don't care about.
It's just a good DraftKings sport.
Sure. So is Outlaw Tour Golf. Like, I like the fact that they're streaming it. I'm not watching a ton of it.
Well, so if I can be straight up with the listeners, I have barely played Outlaw Tour yet because I'm not willing to grind hard enough to get plus EV lineups. Like, I feel like you have to grind a certain degree to have good lineups in it.
The only person that I've seen that's doing really well with it, like consistently, is Tambo. He seems to be like winning playing it.
Yeah, I mean, more power to him. I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of it is just trying to find like guys who aren't, club pro levels, like guys who are, maybe web tour quality golfers or whatever.
Yeah, but the edge isn't in that because
it's in ownership.
No, but those guys are easy to identify. It's figuring out who the rest of the fuck these guys are.
Right, and I mean, I don't know how people are. It seems like a hard grind. It seems like a negligible edge. So I just haven't been playing it. I don't have the mental capacity for it.
But the prize pools are the biggest.
That is not necessarily always a draw for me in like biggest prize pools. I want to play the stuff that can generate money for me. And I don't think that Outlaw Tour will be a money generator.
I mean, that's a very, very shocking take to hear from you, but it's a very reasonable take and smart take to hear from you. That's how you should actually try to do it. I don't participate in that. I want to play the big prize pools, try to win $1 million.
Yeah. Like even in KBO when I played, like I only put one lineup in the big $10 contest, and did other teams in like the single entry because I was right that the edge for me is going to be much greater in those contests as opposed to the big, $10 with it's basically like playing the lottery.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Because I was going to go through some of these questions.
No, let's hit the questions.
Has Davis's complete avoidance of other opinions made him comparable to Cust by simply living his truth over the truth?
I mean, there are probably things that Cust and I agree on, though it's not true that I don't avoid differing opinions. If I avoided everyone who disagreed with me, then what would I get mad about? Right? How would I know what to get mad about?
You need to be triggered.
Yeah, I need to be triggered. So I don't seek it out, of course, but I also am so disheartened and so out on leftist American politics that mostly everything makes me mad these days politically because the lefties aren't left enough, and the conservatives have abandoned a lot of their ideals that started, and it's just I feel like everyone in American politics is doing just about the worst job possible.
You don't feel like the lefties are left enough, but the people that are on the very, very left seem to be the most insufferable people on the planet.
But I don't think that those people that you are referring to are like actual leftists. And, I don't want to have a big discussion about this because, it's just a very hard thing to talk about. But this Joe Biden stuff it's devastating for a lot of reasons. One, basically locking me into, I got to vote for someone I already hated and don't really like. And now I think he's like a bad human being. And so you have to morally weigh, do you vote for this guy who's probably just like, not only not a good politician, but also probably a bad person. But American like the way that every news outlet, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, everything, the way that they all covered it was they basically didn't. They basically just did not report on this Tara Reade incident until they absolutely had to. And I mean, that's like terrible, right? That and it was clearly an initiative from the DNC that they wanted this to not be a thing. And you know, the leftists, they're supposed to be the party of the people. They're supposed to be the party that protects the weak people, and they're not. It's just they're just as power hungry as the people that I hate, and that's terrible, man. That's terrible.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It turns out that they're not trying to protect people; they're just trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, that's so fucking disheartening. Like, and I know that everyone, it seems like a lot of the people who have a problem with my politics, I mean, yes, they have a problem with my politics, but they also don't like the earnestness, and they don't like that I'm like, these are the bad people, these are the good people. And I think that a lot of those people have had their moment that I'm having now where they're like, oh, these politicians actually don't give a shit. And I don't think that is universally true. I think that there are a lot of politicians on both sides in the United States who do actually care about their constituents, and who are smart and who are intelligent. And, you know, it's a big country with a lot of politicians. So the ones that are bad seem terrible, and the ones that are good don't get talked about as much.
Well,
that's
a very interesting point, because I agree with you. And I think that a lot of the shit that we're hearing, even about coronavirus, we're only hearing about the bad stuff. And now I'm not talking about deaths. We're just like the idiots in public. Well, the majority of people aren't like that. Like the vast, overwhelming majority of people aren't these idiots, but they're the only people that you hear about.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are helping each other, right? Who are like, actually, this is a great thing. So remember, I think it was maybe like the second or third Coronacast we did, and we talked about how some grocery stores were just doing like hours for like an at-risk population.
Yeah.
Well, like that's like every store in St. Louis is doing that. And I think that's so cool. And I think that's something that I basically would not have expected at all from people. Like I just would have expected people to be jerks, right? To just be like, well, that, you know, if I want to go at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to go at 8 o'clock in the morning. And by and large, you know, it just seems like people are just being kind and respecting those boundaries. And yeah, you don't hear like that stuff is not getting reported at all, right?
No, I didn't know that was happening in St. Louis, for example. Now, if I was to hear news about St. Louis specifically about this issue, I guarantee you the only news I would have ever heard, and I haven't, but if I was to see something, it would be one person being like, this is outrageous, I want to shop at 6:30 a.m.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I mean, part of that is like the machine of news, right? That exists in the United States now, where, you know, it's just become a vicious machine that eats upon itself. And like, you know, I am not studied enough to know when, I mean, I'm sure news has literally been sensationalized for as long as news has existed because people would rather hear that stuff. But when your country is in the grips of a deadly pandemic and super hyper polarization, on both sides of the political spectrum, it gets even worse.
Well, the internet really hurt this because for a long time, and the media companies across the board are complicit in this, but so are all of us at the same time. And no one ever really tries to put the blame on themselves or people in general for making the news outlets like this. But before, you had like even Fox News like 10 years, not 10 years ago, but like 15 years ago, they were carrying, you know, the bucket of water for Bush. There was, you know, it's state propaganda for Bush, just like MSNBC was for Obama when Obama was president. But there was a baseline before the internet that even though it didn't seem like there was so many mistruths or opinion even on these cable places before the internet existed, because then if people didn't like what they were hearing with the news, like they were gatekeepers, like these were real journalists, whether you agree with their like actual personal politics or not, most of them did a very good job in actually reporting and trying to bring out the truth. There's always going to be outliers who are fucking liars. But then the internet comes along and you can find fake news or you can find half-truth news and headlines on the internet that you personally agree with. So you just start clicking on that and then you turn off the actual news. And then the only way to get these people back to watching, because it is a business, is making shit up or presenting things in a way that isn't necessarily true or talking about in a way that actually doesn't have any relevancy of what the actual fact is because you want to reharness all these people that you've lost. Like, we're complicit in all of this.
Well, I mean, so that is a great point. So to act like these media companies came from nowhere and there wasn't a need or demand that they were filling is hilarious, right? Of course, we the people are complicit in the companies that exist to try and entertain us. You know what I mean?
But it wasn't just about like the news organizations. Yes, they were part entertainment. It's not just an entertainment part. It's that this is where people went for news, and because it was such a secluded industry, whether it be newspapers or whether it be TV media, whatever it might be, the radio, like these were very insular places. People always talked about it's hard to get into these industries because you need to know someone or you need to do that. But maybe that inclusion was keeping out like crazy people who just wanted to bend everything, as we've seen with the internet. Like, I can post, like, if I just decided tomorrow to go like full Tommy G, and not necessarily what he's talking about, but pick a very specific lane that I know that there's like a niche internet community audience for, and just started talking about shit like that, and put out like created my own website and wrote articles about it with like super misleading but very catchy headlines, I would get clicks immediately. I really would. And people are out there just begging for that news, not even real news anymore.
Why aren't we doing that? It feels like much easier way to get rich than what we are doing.
I don't know how you get rich off of that, though. I really don't.
Clicks.
Yeah, but clicks,
the click economy.
Yeah, but the click economy, like, people can talk about the click economy all they want. Just because you get a lot of clicks on something doesn't mean you're necessarily making money.
you have to. Like, I mean, the way a lot of podcasts.
My show is profitable because listen, I don't have, like, I talk to the footballers all, like, not all the time and not necessarily even about this, but like when I do talk to them about it, like their audience is so big and like they must be I don't ask them how much money they make, but it has to be in the millions and millions.
Yeah, I'm sure they do great
because they have very loyal customers. And that's the one thing that they have very loyal listeners. They will buy their products, but that's the same thing with me. Like I have a big audience, but I don't have the hugest audience in the world. But the people that listen to my show or watch my show are willing to trust me that if I'm saying, hey, buy Fantasy National, if they're into golf, they'll buy Fantasy National. Like that conversion is how the podcasts actually make money. It's not off the ads.
Yeah, it's affiliate money.
That can support stuff. Like that keeps the lights on kind of thing. That, hey, Casper mattresses, want you to buy some Casper mattresses. But like those ads aren't taken as seriously as real product placement that is a product that you can get behind, like actually get behind. Like DraftKings is the title sponsor of my show. They pay for the show to happen because they know that if I'm talking about DraftKings and I play on DraftKings, then my audience will play on DraftKings. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Like that. Yeah, that is
all about targeted advertising.
But that's the real click economy. If I became like let's say a super left-wing person and just wrote about how terrible the right is all the time and how terrible centrists are, and me and you start a website and we get 100,000 clicks on every article.
Oh, you know, the click economy of like Trump hate is a real thing.
I would feel that those people are more willing to buy stuff than the other way around.
Of like selling right-wing stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think that is probably true because like, you know, limousine liberals are the worst, and that's definitely who you're targeting with that stuff because you're not selling an ideal, you're just selling we hate the orange man.
Yeah, and like what Triggered isn't a great economic model.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, and there are you know, there are a lot of podcasts that do, like, there are people who make a living on like their Patreons or whatever.
Oh, sure. Like that could be a thing. Like there's the click economy is one thing, but just generating a lot of clicks in and of itself is worthless. Like you need to be, you need to understand what you need to do with those clicks. Like people think, well, if they get 500,000 people to click on their website, you know, the advertising on that web page alone, like that's worth fuck all. It's worth nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
It's worth like 0.00001 cents per click.
Yeah. Yeah. It's literally nothing. You have to have some sort of extra way to monetize. Yeah, for sure. You have to be doing something with the attention that you're generating other than literally just having people click on the page.
Like the one underrated thing in either podcast analytics are tougher, but like YouTube analytics, like time spent on video is very big.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Like when you talk about those like YouTube ads that you see, like, yeah, generating a lot of clicks is one thing and you'll get paid per click kind of thing. But the advertisers on YouTube actually go into like a pool and they will bid more on YouTube ads for stuff that fits the proper demographics. Like my demographics are really good. I have a lot of 25 to 45 rich people who watch my show. Like that's a great audience to put ads
and and probably a lot of people who aren't married with kids.
Yeah, disposable income people who are fluent in internet purchases. Like that is the ideal audience. So people would bid more to put their ads in front of my show over, I don't know, some video game stream.
The disposable income level of Western civilization, it's getting smaller by the day.
It is. Just look around even our industry, the amount of people that have dropped out of this space since this started.
Yeah, it's would not be. Everything seems terrifying every day, man. It's crazy. It really is. You wake up and you're just like, I mean, dude, like I just feel so blessed to like have a job. You know, I can order takeout if I want. Like you know what I'm saying? Like my day-to-day life is stressful, but it's not even close to what many other people are dealing with right now.
Well, it does seem like you've now put yourself into the position of if you didn't have what you have right now, and you can see why people are fucking pissed. You can see why it would lead to not optimal outcome decision making.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I understand why someone would be so frustrated that they want to protest, right? Like I get it. I wish that people would use their brains more than they're using their brains.
All right. Think that's it? This last question. Do you think colleges will be open in the fall?
I do not. No. At least not all of them, right? I think probably we'll get some private colleges and stuff open, but big, massive state universities, I think very likely no.
I don't know. I think it depends on where. I think I'm just trying to put myself into the shoes of like universities in Canada. I just don't see it.
I don't know. It seems, because I mean, if I was going to think about an environment where people are literally, I mean, is there anything grosser than like a college dorm room in terms of spreading disease? It's hard for me to imagine.
No, but at the same time, you might have to do a thing where if you go to college and you're on the campus or you live on campus or whatever it might be, like maybe that's the only way you can do it. You can't live off campus and you gotta be quarantined on campus. Yeah, maybe that's the only way to do it. I'm sure they'll figure out ways to do it, but I'm just curious. I don't know. Because online classes are not optimal at all for anyone. College age, kids age, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
They're fucking useless, man. Like I used to take online classes in college because they were a fucking joke.
Yeah. There's one libertarian talking point that I agree with wholeheartedly that is related to this, which is that like part of large reason why universities are so expensive is that they've become this big, fat, bloated organism where there are too many administrators, there are too many employees whose jobs are mostly superfluous. And if you were looking for positives, you were looking for good things to come out of the coronavirus, it would not surprise me if some of those very bloated administrative positions cease to exist as a result of the coronavirus. And I would view that as a positive outcome.
So almost like the government is too big, we need to make it smaller. University institutions are too big within the structure of them, we need to make them smaller.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the governmental point, right? Because governments, the reason that governments are big, especially in a very big country with lots of people, should be self-evident. Universities do not often need, especially colleges that are not research colleges, where they're mostly teaching colleges. Like, you go there to get an education and learn. Like, there's not tons of breaking, world changing research happening at the college. Having, more administrators than professors actually actively like hurts the education that the students there are getting.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, I know,
Yeah.
it's weird. Like, I just kind of ragged on online classes, but you only take them because you need the half credit or the credit, and they're super easy to pass. And you only like, there were some online classes that I may have done an hour of work on all semester and did fine in.
Right. Yeah.
Like, the only time it took me was like, the only time allotted to it was writing the tests.
Yeah, which is crazy, but yeah, like and that doesn't actually that serves no one well. Literally, not one person in the process, other than the person, I guess, getting paid to teach that class is well off from that, right?
Yeah, well, I guess the big thing is, like, I mean, college, especially in the States, is, I mean, where it's just so ludicrously expensive versus anywhere else in the world, or at least anywhere that I can think of, that I get why it's 4 years for an undergraduate degree or X amount of classes, but like, why does it need to be 4 years worth of education? Like, especially for an undergraduate, like med school's 3 years.
I guess, I mean, many of the people that would answer would say it's because you want people to learn more than just like the base level of their degree or whatever. You want them to get a little bit extra for whatever reason.
Yeah, but generally people spend the first 2 years of college kind of fucking around before deciding their major, right?
Yeah.
So why not just make it one? Take whatever you want first year. It'll all count towards your degree, then you specialize the final 2 years.
Yeah. I went to college for 5 years. Great decision.
I went for like 6.5 because I was a fuck up, but that's me.
Yeah.
I was
the best.
Taking 3 classes per semester, only classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I had a great time.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? That's that like being in college is great. So be in college. It's the best.
Yeah.
Like that was my thought process.
Yeah, I want to extend this for as long as possible. Just live in that state of arrested development where I can be 19 forever.
Mm-hmm. My girlfriend thought it was so stupid. Like because I mean, she's like a really good student and works really hard and studies really hard, and so like me being like, yeah, I failed a math class and I don't know, and whatever. I went there for 5 years. She's like, you're an idiot. Like, well, takes different strokes.
I guess so. All right, man, that's all I got.
All right. Well, enjoy the UFC. I'm looking forward to my Korean soccer. It's going to be a good night.
Did you bet on the UFC or play DK UFC?
Yeah, I played DK. I am like a little rusty in terms of betting. Like I don't like check my betting site every day and stuff anymore. So like, I'm not wanting to bet crusty old lines. So I didn't get any action down, but did play DK.
So listen to the Pat Mayo Experience Dogger Pass podcast for this Wednesday card. That's going to be the one to bet on.
All right, I'm in. I will. Is it up already?
No, because this card isn't even over yet. So,
do we have betting lines up for the new ones?
I don't believe so. So I think that's going to happen tomorrow. That they're going to try to... Oh, no, we do have betting lines. Wednesday, May 13th. What's the big one? Ray Borg versus Ricky Simon. Like, they have people on this first card that, like Greg Hardy is fighting on the card tonight.
Yeah, I saw that.
Your guy, Greg Hardy. But, like, the other ones are...
Dallas Cowboy, Greg Hardy.
Yeah, like, the rest of the cards don't have, like, people I've heard of from... Like, I'm a very... beyond casual UFC fan, but I know a lot about it because Cody and Paul do a show on my show for it. So I'm familiar with a lot of these names. Like, best case scenario on this Wednesday card, I might know one person in the fight. So that's Cody's time to shine in all of this stuff. That, like, he knows all of these people. He knows in depth about all of them, and he can tell you that it's usually, and honestly for him, it's usually like these dinky overseas cards where like the bookmakers don't know a ton, and he match makes MMA anyway, or at least he used to, on like a local level. Like, he just understands odds at a far superior level than almost anyone else does when it comes to MMA.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in. I think a skill a lot of people should be learning is it's a lot easier to win grinding out the micro edges in like minor league MMA, Korean baseball than it is to just like win $5 head-to-heads in NFL where everyone has access to good information.
Oh yeah, but that's not fun.
It's true. It is a lot more of a grind to do that.
All right, man. Stay safe. Hopefully, we'll be back next week with Coronacast 9, but I'd say it's about 50-50 at this point.
We'll see. We'll see if the world still exists then.
I was going to say my son would be born, but thank you for remembering.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I didn't remember. Wow, what an asshole.
I know.
I'm the worst. Well, good luck. I hope your wife is feeling all right.
Yeah, she's doing all right now. She kind of wants it to be over.
Well, who can blame her, right? I can't imagine.
Yeah. All right, dude. Stay safe. Everyone out there, stay safe, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Bye.
That Mayo experience! Experience!